Well, that turnaround happened fast, didn't it? After making the national championship game in 2022, 2023 was the complete opposite for the TCU Horned Frogs. They failed to even make a bowl game, and now entering 2024, well, is this going to be a team that makes another run to the national title? Unlikely, but the expectation for TCU is a bowl game in 2024. Can the Horned Frogs get there this upcoming season? Well, you're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? Here in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to college football prediction season. It's where I predict all 134 teams across the FBS level division of college football, and it means I'm doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. And whether you're a Horned Frog fan or not, I want to thank you for watching this video because it does help support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. If you'd like to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, I encourage you to interact with the channel in any way you can. That means liking, commenting, sharing, watching my other videos, of course, subscribing. It all helps to support what I do here on YouTube, and I'm very thankful for all of it. Let's talk about TCU in 2024, but before we do that, you got to know how we're going to do it. Hey, we're going to dive on in first to talking about the team's offense, then we'll talk about the defense, and then at the end of the video, we will go through the Horned Frog football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. I got a couple more things to say before we do officially start, because right over here are going to be the team stats that they either put up offensively or defensively last season. And for your viewing pleasure, dear viewer, right below the team's logo, right down there, I have put the team's coaching staff. So with no further delay, let's get into talking about the quarterback position for TCU in 2024. They're going to be losing a good one here, and Chandler Morris gone. Now, there was sort of a mid-season shift over to Josh Hoover, whom we'll talk about in a second. But Chandler Morris has gone through the transfer portal. He is transferred over to North Texas. He has 1,532 yards on 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 65% completion percentage on 203 passing attempts last season. You also do lose Grant Tisdale through that room, but the bigger loss there is Chandler Morris. Again, a huge part as to why this team threw for over 300 passing yards last season. But Josh Hoover came in, and hey, he wasn't that bad either. In 298 pass attempts, so did have more passing attempts than Chandler Morris. 2,206 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions on 62% completion percentage. And by the way, both of them hovered right around that 7.5 yards per completion mark. You also do get Ken Seals, who's a Vanderbilt transfer, coming over through the portal, and a freshman in Haas Hejny, I hopefully am saying that last name right, at least I hopefully did in one of the two attempts that I tried to pronounce it, but Josh Hoover will be that primary starter for TCU in 2024. He's a very solid quarterback. He's got good intangibles. He can make some good reads, does have his moments where he has his lapses, of course, those 9 interceptions from last season. You want to see that take a step back, but with a full starting season under Josh Hoover's belt, the sky's the limit for him, man, especially in an offense like this that likes to throw the ball. An offensive coordinator in Kendall Briles with some pretty good offensive wide receiver weapons we'll talk about here in a second. I think Josh Hoover has got the makings to lead this TCU offense to be a pretty good unit out of the Big 12 Conference. You take a look at this running back room, well, you are going to be losing Amani Bailey, who was your leading rusher last season. He has gone to the NFL, and for good reason. Listen to the stat line. 1,209 yards on 223 carries. For those of you math nerds, that's 5.4 yards per carry and 8 touchdowns last season. You also are going to be losing Corey Wren, who had 9 carries last season through the transfer portal. So what does that mean for the running back room? Well, a former Alabama transfer in Trey Sanders, hey, he is coming back. 176 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. Should be the primary running back for TCU in 2024. Cam Cook, Trent Battler back to provide some depth, but you also do get Dominique Johnson coming over from Arkansas, who might be battling with Trey Sanders for that starting role, or at least will play second fiddle to Trey Sanders' carries in 2024. One of those two guys will start. The other will be the primary backup. But Sanders and Johnson could make for a really interesting 1-2 running back duo in this TCU backfield. But you got to take a look at this wide receiver room because, again, these are the primary weapons Josh Hoover is going to be throwing to. Jalen Robinson has graduated. Never really, or I should, sorry, I was looking at the wrong team here for a second. I got all my notes categorized out and things. Jalen Robinson last year, 397 yards and 1 touchdown last season, while Warren Thompson will be leaving as well. Both of those guys have run out of college eligibility. 246 yards and 2 touchdowns for Thompson last year. DJ Allen has entered the portal. He had He was a depth piece last year, only had 2 catches. And you do lose a tight end in Jared Wiley, third leading receiver, had over 500 yards and a team high 8 touchdowns, doubled the second best guy, who is the leading receiver coming back, Savion Williams. 573 yards and 4 touchdowns for him last season. Wiley also, by the way, had a team high 47 catches. So, again, ignore what I said about Savion Williams for a second. Do lose some good talent out of this wide receiver room. Again, you get Savion Williams back, though. J.P. Richardson is also going to be coming back, was the second leading receiver last year. Another former Bama transfer in JoJo Earl, Major Everhart, Dylan Wright, and Blake Noel come back. While you do get some really key guys over from the transfer portal, Braylon James is going to be coming over from Notre Dame. You do get a tight end transfer in Drake Dabney, Chase Curtis, DJ Rogers back in that tight end room, by the way, as well. But the most notable player, in my opinion, coming into this wide receiver room in terms of coming back or coming in through the portal is Eric McAllister. Was the leading receiver with the Boise State Broncos last year. He is a very dynamic weapon, was nearly rated a 4-star transfer, much like Braylon James was by 24/7 Sports. And getting those 2 guys in the wide receiver room were huge factors to what this TCU offense is going to be able to do in 2024. Again, we'll run through the tight end room here again really quickly. Chase Curtis, DJ Rogers coming back, while Drake Dabney is a Baylor transfer coming over through the portal. And you do lose a lot in your offensive line again. Brandon Coleman, Andrew Coker, and Willis Patrick are both, or I should say all 3, off to the NFL, while John Lance has run out of college eligibility. Mike Nichols, Quentin Harris, and Colton Deary are coming back. They are returning to this offense, while Bless Harris, Cade Bennett, James Brockermeyer, who again, an Alabama transfer, and Carson Brund, as well as a couple other transfers coming in to this offensive line room. So now you have to go ahead and talk about this TCU offense in 2024. Starts with Josh Hoover. How dynamic is he going to be? That is question number 1. How dynamic is this wide receiver room going to be? That's question number 2. Can Trey Sanders and Dominic Johnson be a very viable 1-2 combo in the running back room? All of those questions, I think Josh Hoover can be really good. This wide receiver room has got a lot of good talent. And yes, I think Sanders and Johnson will be a more than viable running back 1 and running back 2. I think they'll make for an exceptional pairing in that room. Offensive line only allowed 19 sacks last year. They have to fill some holes, but hopefully they can keep up that stat line from 2023 into 2024. And speaking of keeping things up, well, you have to improve this defense in 2024. Now, you do have a new defensive coordinator, Andy Avalos, the former Boise State head coach, has come over to be the defensive coordinator of this team. So you hope this defense could take a step in the right direction. They just overall were not that great last season. Allowed over 400 yards per game, over 250 pass yards per game, over 150 rush yards per game. They had their moments where they were able to defend the pass, able to defend the run, pretty solid on third down every once in a while, but overall, just not a great defense from last season. A big part of the reason and why they didn't make a bowl game. And yes, they did lose a lot of defensive talent from 2022, as they are losing a lot of defensive talent entering 2024 as well. And I had to fix the name because we're about to talk about him right now. Leaving this defensive line, well, you're going to be losing just an exceptionally talented player in Dominic Williams. Dominic Williams was one of the best defensive linemen on this team last year. I believe was the leader among tackles on this defensive line last season. Had 33 tackles, 3 sacks. He is transferred over to Oklahoma, where I'm sure that production is going to increase, but nonetheless, a very talented player that leaves this defensive line. But besides Dominic Williams, you get pretty much everyone else back. Caleb Fox, Paul Oyewale, probably mispronounced that last name, I apologize. Timon Mitchell, and Michael Ibukun Okayodi, again, probably butchered that last name as well. They will all be leaving, or actually, they will all be coming back to this program. And you do get some guys in through the transfer portal here as well. Davine Deal, he comes over from the Tulane Green Wave. And you also get Nana Osafa-Mensah, who is a Notre Dame transfer. You also do get a Houston transfer coming in there as well. But again, Deal and Osafa-Mensah. That should be Mensa, not Mansa. 1 second. There you go. See? All better now. This is going to be a relatively good defensive line for TCU in 2024. As again, Dominic Williams, probably the most talented player in that room from last season, is gone. But a lot of talent does come back and comes in through the portal as well. Jamoy Hodge, he is going to be leaving he is going to be leaving due to having no more college eligibility. But Jamoy Hodge for this team last season, 83 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 pass defended, was the team's second leading tackler last season. Apologies if you hear any background noises. So who does come back? Well, how about your leading tackler? Nnamdi Obiazor with 84 tackles, 4 sacks, and 2 passes defended last season. Shad Banks and Johnny Hodges will also be back in this linebacker room. While again, you get some guys in through the transfer portal. Caleb Ellerms and Cooper McDonald have found new homes through the portal in the TCU Horned Frogs. Your cornerback room, you do lose Josh Newton. That's going to be a very big loss for this team. Very good cornerback for the Horned Frogs during his time here with this program in Fort Worth. 33 tackles, 7 passes defended, which led the team last season. Also had 1 interception. And then let's talk about the safety room. Millard Bradford is going to be gone. 54 tackles, 5 passes defended, 2 interceptions. Actually was second on the team last season because you also do lose Mark Perry. Both of those guys are going to be going off to the NFL. Perry, 4th leading tackler on the team last year, at 58 of them. Josh Foster has run out of eligibility. He has since graduated. 26 tackles for him last year. And Randon Fontanet is gone through the transfer portal. Did have 16 tackles last year. Was a pretty solid safety for TCU when he did get playing time. So defensive back room, who do you have coming back? Well, we got to talk about the cornerbacks first on the outside. Avery Helm and Channing Canada will both be coming back to this room. Both of them right around the 20 tackle mark last season. But again, they felt like they were missing some pieces, so they went and got some through the transfer portal. You bring in Travis Broughton over from Utah, and Lamarian James is over from Old Dominion. You want to talk about who comes back in the safety room? Well, sure, I do too. Abe Kamara will be back in this room, but that definitely is not the biggest get back you get in the safety room. That would be Bud Clark. Still, I believe was a member of that national championship caliber team. Obviously, they made a run to the national title in 2022. 33 tackles, 5 pass defended, 3 sacks. Or not 3 sacks, 3 interceptions for Bud Clark last season. While Jamel Johnson also returns again, felt like they needed to go get some more pieces. So that's exactly what they did. They dove into the transfer portal and got Cam Smith, or Cameron Smith, however you'd like to refer to him. He is a Memphis transfer, and then Richard Toney Jr. is a transfer over from Reno with the Nevada Wolfpack. And kickers are people too, so let's show them some love. Jordy Sandy and Griffin Kell, punter and kicker from last season, have both graduated. So Ethan Craw's back to do, or I should say, you dive into the portal. Ethan Craw is in to do the punting duties, as well as the freshman and Kyle Lemmerman to be that primary place kicker for TCU in 2024. Really quickly, let's talk about this defense with Andy Avalos at the helm now. You would think it takes a step up. It loses a lot of very experienced players from last season, but it does return a lot of talent on the defensive front. That should at least get better. It's a pass rush that as well should at least get better. Defensive back room, we'll see how these transfers mesh with these returners, but you have guys like Helm and Clark coming back. Broughton and Toney are some very talented players. I think this is a making for a defensive unit that, again, we'll have to wait and see, but it should at least improve in 2024, which leads me to the TCU football schedule this upcoming season. We'll run through it really quickly. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Horned Frogs will win with ease. Any game in yellow is going to be a close, feisty, competitive game, but the Horned Frogs are able to come out on top, with red being a loss. I have them winning their first 3 games of the season. Now, I will talk about how. Let's start out with the Stanford Cardinal. Yes, I have this game in yellow just because I see it as a good opportunity for Stanford to get out on the right foot at home against a TCU team that has some defensive questions in week 1. However, Troy Taylor's group has got to show me that they can be competitive for me to have more faith in the Stanford Cardinal, just a team that I feel like is going to be sitting at the bottom of the Power 4 ranks in the nation once everything is all said and done. And Stanford loses week 1 to the TCU Horned Frogs. That game on a Friday, by the way. Really no question here in what TCU should be able to do with the Long Island Sharks. I do think that they're going to be able to beat Long Island, an FCS level program, in week 2 before you move on to week 3. Now, I said that they were winning their first 3 games. You might be thinking, whoa, Nate, slow down a second. You mean to tell me that you think TCU's defense that has a lot of question marks entering this season is going to be able to slow down what KJ Jefferson and this UCF offense are going to be able to do? Yes, I do think that. Now, while they might not be able to slow them down in its entirety, UCF is going to have a really dynamic offense this year. They return R.J. Harvey, a 1,400-yard rusher, and why not? They added another one through the portal in Penny Boone. KJ Jefferson is a very dynamic dual-threat quarterback coming over from the Arkansas Razorbacks. They have a lot of good wide receiver pieces as well. But I think this is a case where Big 12 chaos sort of reigns supreme here. This game is at home for the TCU Horned Frogs, which is a big thing, not because it's necessarily at home for TCU, but it's not on the road in Orlando where you have to go play in the bounce house. And TCU's offense is going to be explosive in its own right as well. Again, I think Josh Hoover with this pass catching unit, the running backs are going to be a pretty solid force. And I think TCU just outscores UCF here in this game. Again, no question UCF is the more talented team. This is one of those cases, in my opinion, where Big 12 chaos reigns supreme and the Horned Frogs win that game at home. Now they they win their first three, but I think they lose their next two. SMU is going to be a very talented team. If you don't know who that quarterback is, get to know him. His name is Preston Stone. He's a very, very talented player that has a lot of talented weapons, and SMU always has some really good speed. As well as this one being on the road, TCU will lose to their rival in the battle for the Iron Skillet, and they will be losing on the road to the Kansas Jayhawks as well. Explosiveness is the name of the game over there, especially when Jalen Daniels plays quarterback. If he stays healthy, oh boy, watch out for Kansas this year. Jalen Daniels is back. Devin Neal is back. A lot of those top wide receivers from a season ago are back. If that defense can take a step in the right direction, you're looking at a bona fide Big 12 contender if they already aren't in 2024. However, I do think the losing streak ends at 2 for TCU because I think they're going to come back home and beat the Houston Cougars. And while I love the Willie Fritz hire, there are a lot of players that are going to be leaving that team. There are some really good wide receivers, some really good defensive backs, just some really good offensive and defensive pieces overall that leave that Houston team from a season ago. And while I think Willie Fritz is going to get things figured out in Houston given time, this year is not the year for him. I think TCU beats Houston to move to 4-2 on the season, and you get your first bye week here. And it's a very, very good spot for a bye week because you have to start the second half of the season on the road in Salt Lake City to play the Utah Utes. Now, I am in love with this Utes team this year, and I have not been shy about hiding it at all. They're my college football playoff favorite to come out of the Big 12 Conference, and I have TCU losing this game. Cam Rising is back. I love Kyle Whittingham as a head coach. You know his defense is always going to be aggressive and play a really, really good brand of football. Utah's going to have a lot of good pieces this season, possibly the best group of pass catchers Cam Rising has ever had. And I think TCU drops to 4-3 with that loss in Salt Lake City. But they get to come back home, and I do think that they they get a win against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Texas Tech has got a lot of question marks themselves as well, but Texas Tech, much like TCU, I think is going to be one of those teams that's going to have to scratch, claw, and fight for a couple wins this season, much like TCU probably is going to end up having to do against the UCF Knights. But I see TCU being a little bit more talented than Texas Tech this year, and it also helps that TCU has this game at home. Texas Tech, TCU, a couple interesting teams in the state of Texas to figure out, but the Horned Frogs come out on top. However, I do think they go on the road and lose to the Baylor Bears. And while the Bears have a lot of question marks to answer, especially defensively, even some offensive questions to answer as well, there is one position they don't have to answer. That's the quarterback position, and DeQuan Finn is a transfer from Toledo that I absolutely love. I think he's a really, really good player, and he's going to lead Baylor to a couple wins that maybe Baylor shouldn't necessarily have this season. So I do have TCU falling down there to 5-4. Before they end up picking up their bowl-clenching win against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now, Oklahoma State's going to be a very talented team this season as well, and you never count out Mike Gundy's squad. You just don't do it. It is college football malpractice. Bad. Do not count out Coach Mike Gundy. However, this is an Oklahoma State team that does have some question marks. They are losing a lot, but again, they are the more talented team here. So, Nate, what's going on? Well, much like that UCF squad, I think TCU is just one of those teams that is going to embody the chaos of the Big 12 Conference, much like they did in their 2022 title run, and I think they win this one here as well. It also helps they have it at home. Oklahoma State will get tripped up on the road once or twice this season, and I have one of those times being here to the TCU Horned Frogs. But unfortunately for you Horned Frogs fans, I think 6 wins is all you're going to get, at least in the regular season, because you do have to come back home and play the Arizona Wildcats. No Big 12 chaos this time around, as I think that Noah Fafita and Tyrone McMillan with that passing attack shred you. And then I think you just suffer a tough heartbreaking loss on the road against the Cincinnati Bearcats. Yes, Cincinnati still has some development to do under Scott Satterfield to get back to where they were under Luke Fickell. But they're going to be, while the record might not show it, better than last year, and they will get a win against the TCU Horned Frogs, which leads me to a 6-6 record. Now, again, chaos of the Big 12 can help TCU or it can hurt them. I have it helping them more than it hurts them here this season, but we'll see what happens with the Horned Frogs. I got 6-6. They just sneak into a bowl game. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Remember to play hard and tailgate harder. And coming up next, we'll move to the Big Ten, talk about the Golden Gophers of Minnesota. Goodbye.